What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And I know the big boy video got a lot of attention. I kind of figured that it would for obvious reasons. But before that, I had posted yesterday morning. I posted a video about my own toxic relationship with alcohol, my addiction, if we're gonna keep it a buck. And the comments were powerful, right? And I appreciate all the comments, on the page, regardless of the content. But in particular on that video, a lot of people sharing from their experiences, sharing from their challenges, sharing from their successes and their victories and their overcoming. And so I want to say thank you. Thank you for willing to be transparent, willing to be vulnerable. And something that came up repeatedly was this idea of tapering off, right? Or folks saying, "Hey, I want to reduce how much I drink, or I've been drinking a little too much, or maybe I have a toxic relationship with alcohol." And withdrawing from alcohol cold turkey, if you've been drinking for a while, and it doesn't have to be, 6 months, it doesn't have to be bottles a day or cases a day. But if you have been drinking consistently for any real period of time, it can be life threatening to quit cold turkey. And so I had mentioned tapering in the comments, and I thought, you know what, let me do a video about it. And so that's what this is. I am not a doctor. I do not give medical advice. This is not medical advice. Um, I'm gonna show you guys a website. This is a little different from what I normally do. I normally don't just read off of the internet when I do videos, unless I'm talking about paperwork or something, right? Like legal cases. But in this case, I looked this up. I read it already, and it's a lot of good information. And so we're gonna go through this together. I will share a little bit more of my own personal experience. As I had said yesterday, man, I ended up in the hospital in critical condition. Like I was messed up, and I was in there for a week, and then even in coming home, I had to take tranquilizers and taper off of tranquilizers for, I want to say, around 2 weeks. I don't remember exactly, but it was a decent little period of time. And the doctors were on me like, hey, no matter how you feel, make sure that you taper off of these tranquilizers because you are at extreme risk of a stroke or a seizure, just organs in your body shutting down, even though you may not feel it coming on. And so, and in my case, that happened, that whole process, right, of me going to the hospital started happening just hours after I stopped drinking. But again, I was drinking an unusual amount, right? Like constantly, I constantly had an open container. Every waking moment in that phase of my life, I had an open container. And so just a few hours, and it wasn't the shakes and the trembles and stuff. It was me laying down in bed. I don't quite feel so good to like I think I'm gonna die, and I've had a lot of health issues. I've had a lot of surgeries. I beat cancer. I've had a lot of stuff. So I don't I'm not paranoid about how I feel. I'd rather sit at home and tough it out than run to the hospital. But that was that was different. So anyways, I'll talk a little bit more about that. It is not a season of my life I'm proud of. Obviously, I hope nobody interprets this as any kind of bragging or boasting. Uh, but but let's get into this site, right? So this is the Recovery Village Columbus. I'm not too familiar with them. I don't know who they are, but they got some good information. So it says for safe recovery from heavy drinking, have a plan in place. Quitting abruptly can be dangerous without medical supervision due to potential withdrawal symptoms. Gradually decreasing alcohol intake through supervised tapering can make quitting safer and ease withdrawal severity. So part of it is about comfort. But again, alcohol and heroin are the two substances that quitting cold turkey can end your life. Like it's not a game. Which should also give us some perspective into like, damn, what the hell is this doing to my body when I take it all the time, right? So tapering off alcohol versus going cold turkey. People look People looking to quit drinking may consider either tapering or going cold turkey, meaning they abruptly stop. Let me fix this. Meaning they abruptly stop all alcohol consumption without weaning. Taper method. An alcohol taper is a way to wean yourself off alcohol and avoid withdrawal symptoms. Although all forms of alcohol cessation, which just means quitting, should be done with medical guidance, tapering your alcohol intake may allow you to self wean from drinking at home. When you taper your alcohol, you slowly reduce your alcohol intake over time. By gradually drinking less instead of stopping cold turkey, your body has a chance to adapt to smaller and less frequent drinks. In turn, your risk of undergoing alcohol withdrawal may be lower. And there's some actual specific strategies, right? So if some of this sounds familiar, like damn fool, this is common sense, just rock with me for a second, right? They have this self-assessment test over here. So if you go to their website, I'll leave a link to it in the description. Um, maybe you want to take that self-assessment, but most of us, for the demographic that watches my channel, if you're doing too much, right? So anyways, cold turkey method. Quitting alcohol cold turkey is not recommended and can be dangerous. Alcohol is a central nervous system depressant that leads to an increase in brain neurotransmitters that slow down your brain's functions, such as gamma aminobutyric acid, GABA. We'll just call it GABA. When you drink heavily over a long period, your brain and body adapt to expect this. That's the key point. If you suddenly quit drinking, your brain can start to make more of an excitatory substance called glutamate. This excessive glutamate level can lead to alcohol withdrawal symptoms, which can be dangerous. I'm not trying to get into the science of it. That's not my specialty, to be quite honest. Prolonged and excessive alcohol consumption can impact your brain, causing changes to the neurotransmitter GABA receptors. Heavy drinking can lead to a reduction in the sensitivity. Heavy drinking can lead to a reduction in the sensitivity of your brain to the amount of GABA produced. If you abruptly stop consuming alcohol, your brain may not have enough sensitivity to GABA, which can result in hyperexcitability and withdrawal symptoms. Alcohol withdrawal symptoms often start anywhere from 6 hours to a few days after a person's last drink. Alcohol withdrawal symptoms generally peak within 24 to 72 hours, but may continue longer. Symptoms include sweating, fast heart rate, tremors or shaking, insomnia, nausea or vomiting, hallucinations, agitation, anxiety, seizures. Shit, half that shit is the reason I would drink, right? Delirium tremens is the most severe complication of alcohol withdrawal, and its symptoms can start as soon as 48 hours after the last drink. Delirium tremens is a medical emergency, and you should contact 911 if you suspect someone may be experiencing this complication. Symptoms of delirium tremens include fever, hallucination, seizure, extreme agitation, extreme confusion, tremors. When I was in the hospital, and this is under medical care, there's a video that my lady has. Um, Most embarrassing video that I think that's ever been taken of me. Um, and I'm sitting in the hospital bed, and I had been on an IV for a few days. I wasn't eating food. I was NPO, so no eating food. And they gave me like this pudding or tapioca or something, but it was a little cup. You guys know what I'm talking about. And I had a spoon. And I'm sitting in the bed, and I don't completely remember this. I have a loose memory of it, but I don't remember it happening the way that I observed it happening in the video, where I was taking a scoop of the yogurt or pudding or whatever and going to eat it. And and it was like when you're feeding a child, and they don't want to take their food. And you're like, oh, here comes a plane type thing, right? It I couldn't line it up right. I that physical my motor skills were that shot that it took a lot of focus to get that spoon from that little container in my hand to my mouth. Um, I I looked like I was probably brain dead and just had some loose motor skills. Like it was ugly. It was embarrassing. Um, that's the delirium tremens. That's I was off. I was off, and so that notice it comes in 48 hours later, which means you may start to feel some of the withdrawals, but you're like, oh, I can hang. I can handle this. And they caution against that later in this article, but you may start to feel a little bit of the shakes, a little bit of this, but you're like, I can tough it out. But notice if you get a couple days in without having a drink, and things take a nosedive. Um, Seek medical attention. Seek medical attention. Whether you're tapering or not tapering, no matter how you're doing it, seek medical attention because things ain't going right. And I'll talk about some of the pitfalls to the medical attention part also in this video if I remember. Benefits of tapering off alcohol. Tapering alcohol is beneficial because you can avoid alcohol withdrawal symptoms. Genius. This is because when you drink heavily for months or years, your body can start to depend on alcohol to function normally. This phenomenon is called physical dependence. When you are physically dependent on a substance like alcohol, your body adapts accordingly. So, sorry, I'm still addicted to caffeine. There's mental addiction, right? There's the addiction in your mind. I need this. Your brain kind of starts triggering some stuff. But there's also substances you can become addicted to that it changes your body chemistry. So it's no bullshit that your body needs that substance. And somebody left a comment about pills, and they were like, "Hey, I've avoided addictions in my family for all these years, but I've been on these pills from the doctor, and I'm hooked, but they're prescribed." That's physical dependence and addiction are not necessarily the same thing. Addiction is your life has become unmanageable. Addiction is your operating outside the confines of medical guidance, right? You're abusing stuff, you're using it recreationally, you're doing your own thing. Whether or not you're actually feeling high or you're just getting high enough to be well, um, you're you're not doing something because you have to medically, you're just doing it because you're strung out, right? But there are things that you can be prescribed where you can develop a physical dependence because that's just what the medication does to you. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you are addicted in the same way of a problem, right? Some people need those medicines. My grandmother was on a lifetime prescription of codeine. She had the same surgeries I did, the same cancer, but they had less technology back then. And so they gave her codeine just to slow down her digestive process, right? Basically like Imodium, but they didn't have Imodium. So they used codeine. She's a little lady, man. She was a little lady and she was taking enough codeine to kill a small horse by the time she passed, right? Because she had been on it for so long, and the physical dependency she developed, a resistance to it, and they had to keep upping it. So I just want to be clear. I don't want to get too off track, but addiction and dependency are not necessarily the same thing. But when it comes to alcohol, there is a physical dependency that happens in the process of you becoming addicted. When you quit drinking cold turkey, your body suffers from a cascade of changes caused by the sudden shift. This can be dangerous. Since alcohol depresses central nervous system activity, quitting drinking can cause an imbalance of the gamma shit, right? Glutamate. This excessive glutamate triggers alcohol withdrawal symptoms, which can sometimes be dangerous. Tapering alcohol helps to avoid this scenario. The cons of tapering alcohol, right? The downside. When done under medical supervision, tapering off alcohol has few downsides. However, tapering can sometimes be unsafe if you attempt to do so on your own without a doctor's knowledge. For example, if you start to suffer from alcohol withdrawal symptoms, despite an attempt to taper, your symptoms may worsen before you have the chance to seek medical attention. It could wind up being too late. For this reason, even at home tapers should be done under a doctor's care. Uh, I have tapered at home, not under a doctor's care, right? On a relapse. But the initial time, I really taper so much. I went to the hospital and they just you know induced me, right? But so I've done it at home without medical supervision. You have to be the judge of your own self. We're all adults, but again, be mindful of it. If you have tapered before or you've quit before, it gets more dangerous each time you do it. It gets more risky, and I'll get to that in a second. Alcohol tapering strategies. The safest way to taper off alcohol is with the doctor's help. By looking at your medical history and alcohol intake, your doctor can determine whether you need to taper in a medical detox facility or can safely detox at home. Most of the time, they're probably going to suggest you do so at a medical detox facility. But if you know how to advocate for yourself and push that line, then you can probably get them to sign off on you doing it at home. And you'll just have to call and check in with them. If your doctor decides it is safe to taper at home, it is still best to be prepared. Some tips for having a safe alcohol taper at home include Calculate your daily alcohol intake before starting the taper. This allows you to better track your progress over time. You got to be able to put a handle on how much you're drinking. You can't just say, "Oh, I drink a lot." Right? That a lot is not a certain amount. That's relative, person to person. What's a lot to you may not be to me, vice versa. Consider drinking beer or drinks with comparatively low alcohol content. And there's different kinds of taper. We'll get into that next. Support your nutrition by having a healthy diet with lots of B vitamins, especially thiamine, which is vitamin B1. Stay hydrated with sports drinks like Gatorade to replenish your electrolytes. Direct taper. Reducing the amount of the chosen substance consumed daily is known as a direct taper, but it may not be effective for everyone. It is only advisable to direct taper if the preferred drink is beer with a low alcohol percentage. If you're taking shots or you're drinking whiskey or vodka or whatever, it's different, right? Direct taper uh, is well, there it says direct tapering is not recommended for liquor drinkers as it is challenging to measure the amounts and can result in binge drinking. Additionally, mixed drinks may contain sugar or other additives that could exacerbate withdrawal symptoms and should be avoided during the taper. So when I went to the hospital, I had been drinking these Mike's Harder tall cans. Right? I think they're 8% or 13%, but a ton of sugar. And that's what led to me being diabetic. When I first came on YouTube, I would talk about being diabetic and cook various, diabetic friendly meals and that sort of thing. That's a result of the drinking. That's where that came from. And I was open about it back then. It's not a secret, but um I still have blood sugar issues, although I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm diabetic. I think more hyperglycemic. But yeah, the sugar is almost a separate issue aside from alcohol, right? It compounds it. So if you're drinking very sugary drinks, that's another form of withdrawal and detox that you're gonna have to go through, and that your body is gonna take time to adjust to having less sugar flooding your system. So it works for beer because you can measure cans of beer, types of beer, alcohol content of beer. If you're just taking sips off a bottle, it's a little bit harder to measure, you know. Substitution taper is what you do in that case. Gradually reducing alcohol consumption can be achieved through a substitution taper. This can involve switching to a different alcoholic beverage or replacing alcohol with a prescription drug, but the latter should only be done under the guidance of a medical professional, of course. It is important to know that prescription medications should not be used for substitution taper unless it has been prescribed as a part of a medical detox program. Like these people don't want to get sued, so they're being very repetitive with some very important stuff, though. Uh, in the case of switching to a different beverage, it is recommended to count the number of drinks consumed daily and gradually replace them with a beverage that contains less alcohol, such as beer. This method is safer than abruptly stopping alcohol consumption, especially when switching from hard liquor to beer. Drinking beer can also help maintain hydration through the taper. Part of the thing with tapering and stopping drinking, depending on the folks you have around you and the support system or the lack of a support system, uh, folks that don't understand it might be like, "Hey, fool, if you're gonna quit drinking, right?" And especially if you have a spouse or you have somebody in your life that is encouraging you, like, "Hey, you need to stop," then they're gonna want you to stop. A lot of times because they don't know any better. And so when you come at them, you're like, "Hey, I'm quitting, but instead of vodka, I'm gonna go get a case of Ronas, right? Instead of a bottle." Of course, some people are gonna look at you like you're not quitting drinking. That's bullshit. Uh, Educate them, right? Or show them this video, right? Like it's because it is a process, and don't get pressured into doing something that can hurt you, right? More than the alcohol drinking already is. And so it's a little different. It's not the same for I think addicts of other substances, right? And addiction and addict is a tough word, so I don't want folks to get caught up with that word. That's why I say toxic relationship with alcohol. Because sometimes just that word doesn't sit right with us, and we put kind of a wall up. Like, nah, fool, I ain't no fucking wino. Okay, cool. I'm not saying that you are. Maybe just right now you have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And maybe you don't. Obviously, there are plenty of people who drink alcohol who don't have a bad relationship with it. And for those folks, more power to you. You know, this this ain't for you, right? And hopefully it never is. But it might be for somebody that you love and care about. So, anyways, when it comes to detoxing, it can look a little different than what people expect. Um, This is why information is important, right? Because if you're going to do it, you might as well try to do it the right way. Unfortunately, alcohol tapering has not been extensively studied. This means there's little data about the best way to taper your drinking. However, some groups have published tapering examples to assist those trying to quit drinking. According to the examples, if you drink fewer than 20 standard drinks a day before beginning the taper, lower your intake by 2 drinks a day until you get to zero. And I would spread those out over the day, right? Like um if if you drink a 18 pack every day, then over that same period of time, cut yourself a little short, right? And like I said, lower by 2 drinks a day until you get to zero. If you're an all day type of drinker where you're drinking an 18 pack or you're drinking, you know, a, a case 24 pack over an all day thing, obviously you don't want to drink 10 of them in the beginning of the day all of a sudden because you're tapering and you're trying to binge and get your buzz on. You like have a little bit of thought behind what you're doing, right? You want to spread it out. And what you're trying to do is keep a consistent amount of alcohol in your system throughout the whole period and then daily reduce how high that alcohol content is little by little. If you drink 20 or more standard drinks a day before beginning the taper, day one, have 1 drink per hour for a total of 16 drinks. Because it's assuming you're going to lay down for about 8 hours, right? And if not, then this is not an exact science, right? It's ballpark. Uh, Day two, have 1 drink every hour and a half for a total of 10 drinks. Days 3 through 7, lower your intake by 2 drinks per day until you get to zero. So you notice that this tapering is not a month-long process. This ain't methadone getting off of heroin, right? And shout out to those and medically assisted, treatment and detox and stuff like that. That's a whole nother conversation. But the reality is, if we're being honest, there are people that are on methadone years after getting on heroin. They should have been off the methadone a long fucking time ago. Um, but but they haven't, right? They've stayed on it. They're not tapering, right? And probably not getting the other support that they need in the recovery process aside from just not using the drug as much. Tapering should not be a long thing, right? It's you're looking at 7 to 10 days tops, and you should be down to 0 drinks, which can seem a little scary, right? But but again, it's worth it. If you feel like it's necessary, then it's probably past necessary. You should not begin tapering plan before talking to your doctor. Based on your medical history, your doctor can advise you about the safety. This talks about insurance covering detox. Of course, they're going to advertise, right? Challenges of quitting alcohol. Quitting alcohol can be extremely hard, especially without medical support. Alcohol cravings can make it difficult to stay sober. Further, mental health disorders like anxiety and depression are extremely common in those who struggle with drinking, and these disorders can make it even harder to stay sober. A lot of times we have some mental health challenges that fuels our unhealthy drinking, right? But also sometimes that stuff is developed. Like when we talk about mental health, I think a lot of times people think of it in terms of like a constant condition. Like, oh, I'm bipolar, so I've been bipolar every day of my life and I always will be. Or, I have depression or I have this, I have that. Like it's something that you catch and you keep. A lot of times it's waves, it's seasons, it's temporary. Um, so even if you didn't necessarily have mental health challenges coming into your drinking, they're gonna have some coming out, right? Because you were medicating and now you're not. And so you're gonna have to address the shit that you were medicating to avoid. Um, that's just all part of the process, you know. In addition, social pressures can make it hard to quit drinking, especially if your friends or family also drink heavily. Quitting drinking can feel very isolating, making it even more difficult to do alone at home without medical support. That is true. Community, man, we are communal people. I say it all the time. We are designed to be in community with each other, and this is no exception. What is the kindling effect? So here is the oh, I've tried this before, let me try it again effect, where it can get particularly dangerous with alcohol. Uh, the kindling effect is an aspect of alcohol withdrawal that makes repeated attempts at withdrawal less safe. If you go through alcohol withdrawal multiple times, the kindling effect can occur. With kindling, the brain becomes increasingly sensitized to stopping alcohol. In turn, you can suffer from increasingly severe withdrawal symptoms every time you try to stop drinking. This is dangerous because if you have unsuccessfully tried to stop drinking in the past with only mild withdrawal symptoms, you may assume you can handle another attempt on your own without help. Unfortunately, your brain may be sensitized to withdrawal due to kindling, which can set you up for unexpectedly severe withdrawal symptoms. Essentially, what they're saying is if you've deprived your body of alcohol kind of suddenly, right? If you've tried to quit drinking before and the withdrawal symptoms kick in and all that, and either you cave or you go through it then, but you go back to drinking soon afterwards, what happens is your brain, our bodies are brilliant, right? And your brain starts to realize, hey, you know what? Every now and then, this fool goes to cut us off. And we don't like that. So at the first sign of getting cut off, we're going to panic, right? We're not going to wonder, hey, what's going on and go through this withdrawal process. We're going to jump to the end of the line. Like, hey, stop it now. And and so you can find yourself heavily in detox really fucking quick if you've done this repeatedly. So again, something to keep in mind, right? How to taper off alcohol safely and effectively. And then this is the end, right? Little data is available about the safety and effectiveness of alcohol tapers. Of course, because there's not profit in people tapering off of alcohol. There's profit in people drinking, right? This is because tapers have not been extensively studied. In contrast, robust evidence supports quitting alcohol while under medical supervision. Because there is profit in quitting alcohol under medical supervision, there is not profit when you do it at home. Again, I'm not suggesting you do it on your own. I'm not saying that you can't. You got to make the best choices, but there is a profit in, motive in all of this stuff, right? There is money to be made from our drinking. There is money to be made from our toxic relationship with alcohol. And there's money to be made when we go to the doctors and say we need help. Now, something to be mindful of, if you go to the doctors, you tell me I got a drinking problem, depending on your doctor, depending on your insurance, depending on your circumstances, um, that might get put in your file, right? Which doesn't mean employers and that kind of stuff are going to see it, because it's still HIPAA protected, right? It's private medical information, but other doctors will see that in the future. So let's say down the line you need a root canal or something, they might be a little bit even more hesitant to give you pain medicine than they would have been already with the whole opiate crisis, quote unquote, because they're like, oh no, you got a history of addiction. So I want to be upfront about that. That's there. Now, some of you guys, that's already in your file, right? Because of your other life experiences. And so it really doesn't matter. And, my thought on it is it's worth it, right? If that's what it takes to get you healthy and in your right mind, then it's a small price to pay, right? But it is something to be mindful of. It could end up in your record that you have a history of addiction, right? And again, other doctors in the future will see that that may have an impact on other stuff that you have going on. So I'm not trying to deter anybody, but I also, I try to keep it as real as possible and be honest with you guys. So if you struggle with drinking, the safest way to quit is under a doctor's care. If you drink heavily, look, we know what they're gonna say, right? It's of course there's more to it than that, but for those, I've heard some of you guys in the comments, and you're like, hey, I just want to slow down, you know, and and that might be all you need, right? A reset button, I've been a little carried away through the holiday season, right? And now it's time to kind of get back to reality, get back to some balance. I'm just out of balance right now. Okay, cool. Handle that. Right? That doesn't mean you gotta go to AA meetings every fucking day, you know? But it doesn't mean that you don't. To each their own. You have to decide for yourself what works and what doesn't. But reducing your alcohol intake is the first step. So, anyways, this is not one of those videos that's gonna get 50,000 views, right? But I really do believe that those who need to see it will share it with somebody. This is the prison genre, so it's a particular audience. I try to expand that audience with the content that I talk about. But you may have people in your life who could benefit from this video who wouldn't give two shits about a damn other thing that I talk about. Share it with them. right? Share with them, or at least share the information that you receive and point them in the right direction. Like I said, I'll leave a link to this particular website in the description of the video. But if you just Google it, you come up with all kinds of stuff, and you guys are sharp, man. Just just be thoughtful about what you're doing. So there you have it. I'll drop another video later on today. I don't know exactly on what, to be quite honest. I haven't decided yet, but I will do a video for those want to know about my paperwork. Uh, my case is not complicated, right? I caught an attempted murder in 1996 in Contra Costa County. Shot a young man named Brian Duarte in the neck, young adult, to be clear. I was 19. I think he was older than me, but shot him, and I was the only person that went to jail for my crime. It's not something that I'm proud of. I don't brag about it. He's been in a wheelchair ever since. I got sentenced to 10 years in prison. I came home in December of 2005. Never went back to prison. Um, so so yeah, but it's a knee jerk reaction to some of the stuff that I've been putting out there about some other characters, and so I get it. That's fine. I got nothing to hide. All that stuff's been put out there before, but I'll do it again. That's not gonna be today, but probably later on this week. If you guys have thoughts around content or stuff that you want me to cover, drop it in the comments. Or shoot me a DM on any social media. Email me Joshua at thehomiehangout.com, and we'll go from there. Help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. Help your community because they need you. And like I said, stay tuned, man. There's more content on the way. Take care.